What happened to clone troopers who were captured by the Separatists? While many people like to justify the CIS movement and say how they were more moral and ethical than the Republic, this is an outright lie. We have bore witness to several of their atrocities that they have committed. However, the topic of this video, the captured clones, easily is their worst crime by far. But what did the Clankers do to the clones they captured? On the battlefield during the Clone Wars, we often see the Republic winning against the droids. It's only natural, they are the good guys and they have to win. But this isn't always the case. And in those cases, the clones' capture was actually pretty unpredictable. It varied depending on a few factors: the clone's rank, the CIS general, and the potential information they could extract from said clone. However, the fate that fell upon many clones were simply just straight up execution.
Do we take prisoners?
I don't.
Which seems like a war crime, but hey, we all know it's okay when the good guys in Canada does it. But as dark as this may sound, the droids oftentimes were not programmed to take any prisoners, instead having a kill target on anyone, even surrendering clones. But for those who were captured, they usually had a very dark and grim fate. In this scenario, they were captured for one of two reasons: interrogation or bargaining and negotiation. For interrogation or bargaining/negotiation, the clones that were taken for these reasons were oftentimes very high-ranking clones or clones who held a lot of knowledge about potential Republic whereabouts and plans. For these clones, they would be interrogated, and this almost always meant torture or some form of abuse, whether that be physical or mental. And it wasn't uncommon for a clone to be killed once the information was taken from them. A fantastic example of this torture was with Clone Trooper Alpha 17, the Shad before Rex became a fan favorite, in one mission where he and Obi-Wan were captured on the planet of Ratatak. In this story, Alpha was captured by Ventress, who ruthlessly beat him and cut him with a knife, demanding to know the location of the secret rebel base.
Where is the rebel base?
Wait, sorry, wrong movie. She demanded to know where the Republic had its medical facilities. But Alpha, like the Shad he is, wouldn't reveal a thing to her, instead staying quiet and only speaking to tell her his name, his general, and that he wasn't trained to answer questions, only to fight. As the interrogation dragged on, Ventress would try to use mind games on him, attempting to break him down mentally, telling him that he was nothing more than fodder for the Republic and that they didn't care if he lived or not. But ultimately, these strategies would fail as Alpha remained persistent and said nothing. Eventually though, Alpha and Obi-Wan would manage to escape. Kenobi was actually wearing a Sith torture mask while he was captured. I swear man, Legends was crazy back then. It is also widely speculated that this was a very similar fate that fell upon many clones who were captured, as many people within the CIS and Republic did not view the clones as living or independent creatures, way less so for the CIS, who viewed them as dogs bred for war. And it's also not like the CIS generals cared much about the treatment for the clones or anyone for that matter. With that said, many clones, regardless of how they were treated, most of the time never gave up any information to the CIS, as they were not trained to do so.
We can go round and round in this circle if you want. I ain't telling you anything.
And possibly even genetically modified to being capable of it. But this is purely just a theory. However, regardless of that, if they gave up information or not, almost every single time, a clone would be executed afterwards. However, if they were not used for interrogation, they would instead be used as a tool for bargaining or potentially as a human shield, as the Separatists knew just how much the Jedi would try to save the clones, like we saw with Anakin and Plo Koon. However, sometimes the clones wouldn't be captured for either of these reasons. Instead, they would be captured to potentially develop a new weapon to be used against the clones. A prime example of this is with Clone Trooper Echo.
Is there an Echo in here?
Yes,
What?
I'm Echo.
Which, after he was supposedly killed in action while trying to save Jedi Council member Even Piell from the Citadel, would somehow return as Wat Tambor and the Techno Union would take his barely surviving husk of a corpse back to the planet of Skako Minor and fuse him with machinery, where they would basically take his brain apart and use it to counter many Republic forces. And while this is very dark, it also raises the suspicion that as the war dragged on, the Separatists became more and more desperate to gain any advantage in any way they could, regardless of the means. This all sounds very harsh in my opinion, but you want to know what else is very harsh? Palpatine's training for Darth Maul. To explore that topic and more, make sure to click on screen now. But anyway, that is what the Separatists did to capture clones. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, it would mean a lot to me if you could like and subscribe, as it would help the channel out a ton. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you.